Let's talk to barrister and commentator Steven Barrett. Welcome, Steven.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here, as always.
Always a pleasure, Steven. Well, let's talk about the conference first. We understand that 895 migrants having come across on Saturday, over 400 Sunday, only 70 yesterday, but we think maybe more than 400 today, so you can forget about Labour's various deterrents, one in, one out, not really deterring anyone on a massive scale, not significantly, clearly. He told the mass ranks of the Labour conference faithful that they need to get on board with uncomfortable decisions on migration and welfare cuts. What exactly do you think he means by uncomfortable decisions on migration? I mean, what's the next decision they're going to make? We've heard Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, the not very tough Home Secretary, saying that she won't let migrants in unless they're working, unless they can speak English, unless they have spotless criminal records, which when Reform said that, Labour dismissed those measures as racist. But when Shabana for Labour says them, apparently it's saintly and moral. So there's that. But when he says welfare cuts, they just tried that, didn't they? And thanks to Angela Rayner and a massive backbench rebellion, their bid to save £5 billion on our £320 billion a year welfare bill completely failed, to the extent that we ended up with an even bigger welfare bill rather than cutting it down at all. So when he says you've got to make some uncomfortable decisions on welfare cuts, he's incapable of doing that. And as for migration, I have no idea what he's on about anymore. I mean, he said smash the gangs in his ridiculous speech. Again, it's good to hear that one. All the old favourites coming back to haunt us. And he also talked about you know, getting tough on welfare cuts. But, you know, he's already failed to make uncomfortable decisions on these two issues. What's he talking about, do you think?
He lies. And that's a really unfortunate truth. I actually think it's a very sad truth. I was very largely brought up by my working class granny to not lie. And I think not lying is quite important. Now, don't get me wrong, there are bounds to that. So if somebody asks you whether or not I'm fat, I very sincerely hope you lie. But, you know, we are dealing with a Prime Minister who just says stuff. And he obviously doesn't mean it. He hasn't smashed the gangs. They've been in power now for well over a year. This is a settled regime. If they were going to do anything, it would have been implemented months before now, and it would be in process now. He'd be able, if it took a long time to solve the problems, which is what he says, he'd at least be able to point to it and say, well, look, we're doing this, 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 and this. It might take a while for the fruits to come, but at least we're doing it. But they're not doing anything. So he just talks. And Kevin, I do think a line was crossed today. I actually don't think we should laugh at David Lammy doubling down and saying that Nigel flirted with the Hitler Youth. I think that they have been othering their political opponents for a very long time. And I think that's incredibly serious. I think it's about time we talk about certain people in politics othering their opponents and encouraging violence. And I think that's where we are, because if Nigel Farage is a fascist who, let's just take them on their own. You know, let's assume, so to say he did flirt with the Hitler Youth, what is that saying to an aggressive lunatic on the far left? It's saying violence against Nigel is legitimate. That's what it's saying.
But that said, absolutely, it's very insightful. Farage is right. This is insightful. This is the kind of rhetoric that leads to Charlie Kirk situations. It really does, and they should dial back on it. Now, as a lawyer, if I was Nigel Farage and I came to you and said, David Lammy just said I flirted with the Hitler Youth, bearing in mind, as I keep saying, the Hitler Youth kind of lost all sense of purpose when Hitler died and Germany lost the war in 1945. Of course, it ceased to exist. It pretty much hadn't exactly been thriving for at least 3 years before that. So it was over in 1945. Nigel Farage was born in 1964. If I came to you and said, I want to sue David Lammy for defamation? I think it's an open and shut case, isn't it?
It's almost certainly an open and shut case, but I'll tell you what any competent defamation lawyer would say, is that they would say that damages are very likely to be low or capped around 100,000. You're likely, if
Works
they
for
fight, just wait for the rest, Kev. You're likely to spend about 400,000 to 500,000 on lawyers.
Yeah.
Even if you win, you're likely to only get about 60% of that back. And effectively, and this is where I want to make it very clear that I have no political allegiance when I explain law to the public.
Yeah.
This is what David Cameron did to defamation. Defamation has been neutered to the point where it doesn't really control wrong speech. It doesn't really stop anybody. That's why Labour politicians just feel able to say anything. They're not going to get sued because the disproportionate relationship between the value that they'd be sued for and the legal costs of it means that it's not going to happen.
All right, Stephen, that's your thoughts as a lawyer, and very valuable they are, of course, expert, as obviously. Your thoughts as a citizen of this country, seeing a politician, a senior politician, Justice Secretary, resorting to that kind of, I think, disgusting tactic.
Well, I think David Lammy must resign immediately. And then I would call upon Merseyside Police to carry out an investigation into the Labour Party for that there are a large number of offences, and I don't want to get bogged down in technicalities, that the public broadly know as incitement to violence. And I think we've seen them at the Labour Party conference. I think that's disgraceful. I have friends in the Labour Party. I have friends on the left. I hope that they are utterly shocked and disgraced. If the Conservative Party does the same thing, I'll be back on to tell you how disgraceful the Conservative Party is. But it's about time that we put down a line in the sand to protect the country that we actually want to be. And I think most of us, regardless of our politics, actually want to be us. You know, Britain. We are a thing. We, you know, famously portrayed by Tolkien as the Shire full of hobbits. That's what we are. We want our beautiful, lovely country back. And we're not going to get it with Keir Starmer othering his political opponents and effectively calling for violence against them.
Yeah, and don't forget that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, in her speech yesterday, she said that large elements of the people who attended the Unite the Kingdom march a couple of weeks ago were skinheads, and I'm not going to use the other term that she used, P-bashers, you know what I'm saying. So this over-the-top narrative, I think, really is very concerning. And just before we move on, just to prove that even Lammy, I think, realised he may have crossed the line, here's Lammy sort of, well, not really apologising, but kind of conceding that what he talked when he said that Nigel Farage flirted with the Hitler Youth, it was absolute nonsense. Here he goes.
You made.
He has denied it, and so I accept that he has denied it, and I would like to clarify that position because in the end the Prime Minister was keen for us to focus on the policies, not the individual.
Oh, yeah, well, of course, saying that somebody flirted with the Hitler Youth, that's not pointing the finger at the individual, is it? That's definitely focusing on politics. Really, really consistent there from David Lammy. It's disgusting, isn't it? I mean, that's what they've been doing this entire conference. They've been trying to demonise Nigel Farage, demonise Reform UK. And, of course, I think it's badly backfired on them because by calling Nigel Farage a racist, by calling Reform's migration policies racist, they are in effect calling millions of Reform supporters and other citizens who support Nigel Farage's ideas, they're calling them racist as well. And I think it's backfiring badly.
Well, it will. It absolutely will, because the British have a very strong sense of fair play, and the British involve a huge number of ethnicities. You know, we are actually diverse already. This fantasy that Keir Starmer and his party seem to have, that we're some sort of... I actually don't know the country that they think that we are, but it's not the country that I am. I grew up in the 80s, you know, with multiracial friends. I mean, we've been multi-ethnic. I had Fluella Benjamin since I watched, you know, children's stuff on the BBC. This is absurd. This is ridiculous. It's offensive. It's rude. But what's really going on is that they're crossing the line into violence. And that's where I think we do actually have to, because we're pretty tolerant as a people. But I think we really do have to say, hang on a second, no. no, no, no. You cannot incite violence against somebody, because God forbid something happens to Nigel Farage tomorrow. What are we all going to do? And I miss her, Kev. So I always flag this, but I miss the late Queen, and I strongly suspect that she kept quite a fetter on politicians, and she would stop them saying stupid things, or if they said stupid things, she'd then invite them to dinner and then explain to them why they shouldn't say stupid things. And it's very clear that Lammy has nobody like the late Queen. That Keir Starmer has nobody like the late Queen to come and say, this is wrong. And Lammy didn't apologise. That's not an apology. He lied about what the Prime Minister said, because the Prime Minister was all about character assassination today. He attacked Nigel as a person. He didn't attack policy. So that's another lie. Okay, and they're very welcome to sue me, Kev, if they want, and we'll end up in the same scenario.
I think they'll probably sue both of us, Stephen, seriously.